Bro, get out of the way, man. I'm with Sabur today. Wanted to find out a bit about this great man on a bit of a more personal level. So, introduce yourself, bro.
I need an easier question, bro. You put him on the spot. What I found strange, and I still find strange, is you have people recite the Quran beautifully and they cry and they have the most amazing tajweed, and you speak to the same person about da'wah and they're like, oh, it's kind of important. The whole Quran's about da'wah, and you're like, does no one see that? There's this.
Bismillah, assalamu alaikum. Today we're with Sabur. We're just here today to have a bit of learn a bit from Sabur and learn a bit about his life experiences. So Sabur, why don't you just tell us a bit about, you know, where did you grow up, where are you from, and yeah, what do you do at the moment?
Okay, I grew up in Oxford, so little village. Went to university, London, then here when I was at university started practicing, and once I graduated, then although I did engineering, I wanted to do something for Islam. So over time, alhamdulillah, started working here in Ayura, and yeah, the rest is just, you know, just giving dawah, and that's been my focus since.
How was growing up in Oxford? What was it like?
It's a village because you know, everyone knows everyone else. Small, sleepy town. It is a city, but it's more like a town. I went to like a really posh type of high school. I think we had like I think I was the only Pakistani in my class, something like this, right? Everyone else generally upper middle class sort of people, and you know, it's a very rich experience. You don't really, a lot of people don't get that sort of experience, so yeah, it's quite interesting.
So what was the role of Islam as you grew up sort of in Oxford? Was it a part of your life then? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I used to live around the corner from a masjid. I used to go there, but you know, as you do in a Pakistani household, you just have a cultural sort of Islam. So when I was about 15 years old in Oxford town centre, I was walking around. Just one day, it was a really unique day in my life, because you know, you just walk around the town centre, you go Waterstones, you go here, you go there. I think I was 14, 15, something like this, maybe younger. And I walked into a bookshop, and in the bookshop, there was a Quran in English. I still remember it's £2, right? And £2 back then was like a lot of money. But anyway.
That was the first time you'd like read it, but when you were 15.
Yeah, the first time I'd actually seen an English translation of the Quran.
Okay, yeah.
So I remember I picked it up. I was like, I got to read this. Picked it up and I opened it and I started reading, and it just hit me.
What
like,
hit you?
I mean, it's kind of like, it's hard to describe. You know, like I was listening to a talk the other day, and it's the student knowledge was explaining that sometimes you don't need to define iman. You know, someone, when it hits them, it's like, okay, I know what that's like. So I started reading the Quran, and it had a huge impact on me. But I didn't start practicing until I went to university. But that had a big impact when I was growing up, and I still remember putting on a light in my room and just reading the Quran. And I mean, the English, even though it's not exactly the exact meaning, but it just hits you. You know, it's the words from your creator. It just hits you. And when you read other things, it's just okay. It's just
okay. What was the if you had to pick one verse that you could say like that hit you the most, and that was the one that kind of would be the one that affected you most? Which one was it as you were reading through it?
Okay, I can't think of a particular verse, but
or which concept, which idea, kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, I remember when going through a translation. It was actually back then on Islam channel. You used to have the Quran recitation with video and English translation. I used to love that as well. And there was some verses about creation, and there was a thing about the ant, and you know, the ant was on the screen, and you know, these sort of things, because the Quran makes you think about things which are normally you think of as very trivial, and it just makes you think of it from a different perspective. And you know, the Quran has a lot about these sort of things. And a few years before that, before I was in Oxford, we used to, in the summer, go in the northern part of Pakistan, which is called Murray, which is where we're from.
I know
It's a very mountainous area.
Very beautiful area.
And I used to collect beetles as a child, right? I don't know why, but my family members tell me that I used to collect beetles and stuff. So I always had this fascination with nature, fascination with, you know, creatures and stuff like this. And the way that Quran speaks about these things, it's in a way that makes you just think about the greatness of Allah. So yeah.
So you finished in Oxford. Next stage of your life was obviously university. Is your story the same as many of us in that you went to university? You know, you met a good bunch of people, a good bunch of brothers, and you kind of fell in with a good group of people, and that's what sort of pushed you to practice more, or was it something?
Pretty
else?
Pretty
Okay,
much.
yeah.
Although what I would say is, when I went to university, the first time ISOC, saw some brothers. Our ISOC, Amir, he was an Afghan brother called Omid. Okay, it seems like you know him. The guy with glasses,
I know him. Yeah, he's got a younger brother called Saeed.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's an engineer.
I know him.
Right?
I know him.
And I remember I
Right,
went
yeah.
to a khutbah the first time in my life. I actually went to a khutbah which I understood in English, because normally being in Oxford, the khutbahs are in Urdu, and you know that's it's not a language you relate to that easily either. And the other masajid, you know, they do an old khutbah in Arabic and whatnot. And I remember this is my first khutbah when I went to university. It was done by Omid. I don't remember what he spoke about, but I remember I started crying in the khutbah. Because that was, and I wasn't even praying at the time. I was just used to do Jummah. But it was like, you know, he had knowledge. He always related things to the Quran and the Sunnah. He had a particular way of explaining things. And, you know, people that came then after Omid, there was another ISOC president. His name was Hashim. And he was like Omid. And so these guys had a lot of impact on me. You know, and that's where I sort of found the deen.
So you left. So you graduated from university. In what year did you graduate in?
2008.
Okay. So after you left university, just what happened after university? You said you worked as an engineer for a bit. Yeah.
So 2008, I basically I applied for a job, got a job, but because it was a recession, my job kept getting delayed. So 2008, 2009, 2010 is when I actually started. So in between, I started volunteering for IERA. So that was 2000.
So would you say that volunteering for IERA was one of the things that's sort of like a problem that a lot of people have when they leave university, is that they feel like they might have an iman drop because they're not surrounded by the same sort of people that they were before? Would you say that maybe that happened to you, and that maybe that might have been basically a stimulus for you to volunteer for IERA? Were you looking for some sort of Islamic sort of environment to be in, or?
Basically what it was, not quite, although I see your point, a lot of people go through that. For me, it was like I wanted to study the deen.
Okay.
So after I left university, I was studying the Quran, and I was not studying it on a formal level. It was just like listening to clips and just learning and stuff like this. And one thing that just hit me really hard was the Quran speaking about dawah. The Quran speaking about calling to Allah. And what I found strange, and I still find strange, is you have people recite the Quran beautifully and they cry and they have the most amazing tajweed, and you speak to the same person about da'wah and they're like, da'wah, yeah, it's kind of important. The whole Quran's about da'wah, and you're like, does no one see that? There's this pink elephant in the room. You know, the Quran, even if you look at the verses that we all recite, you know, Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul, say God is one. So that's in reply to someone, right? And Nuh alayhi salam with his nation, the prophets with their nations, you know, Surah Yasin, the man in the beginning who dies, he's calling to Allah. You just see actually from beginning till end, it's a dawah manual. So I just want you to get involved with people that are involved in dawah. Back then IERA just launched. So I basically walked into the office and said, I want to volunteer. That's how it started, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So tell us, like, at the moment, what's your sort of, we know that your main area of work at the moment is obviously looking into evolution and the philosophy of science. Are there any other areas that you specifically like to research into, or you're focus on at the moment apart from that?
No, I mean, I like talking about the topic of atheism.
Okay.
generally.
Yeah.
Probably because I remember when being at school, there was one particular incident that I remember stuck out for me, is when the teacher, I think it was an RE class or something, said, "Who believes in God?" So I raised my hand, happily, you know, being a Muslim. And I turned around and nobody raised their hand. Like literally no one in the whole room raised their hand, because it was a very secular school in Oxford, Cherwell College. And I remember at that point thinking, why don't they believe in God? Just found it very strange. And then as I got speaking to my friends and stuff like this, they start asking questions, you know, why is there evil? What about this? What about that? And so afterwards you realize it's such a big problem that people don't recognize their creator. Because even when I was at university, and I'll be honest, you know, you have points where you question, okay, am I on the right religion? If I was born in a Hindu family, I'd be Hindu. If I was born in a Sikh family, I'd be Sikh. I mean, there was even one point where I was thinking, I actually said to myself, well, if this is wrong, I'm not going to follow it, right? But one thing I couldn't ever deny was that there's a creator. I mean, that just seems ridiculous to me. And to see that in society today, we have so many people who actually believe that. So that's always something that's drawn me in. So apart from evolution and the philosophy of science, I like talking to atheists, and I like showing that the theism, belief in God, makes total sense, and the other side actually makes no sense.
Okay, so what, just in summary, if you had to give 3 pieces of advice, short, succinct piece of advice for people like us, young people, maybe at university age, leaving university, going into the workforce, maybe looking into giving da'wah, what advice would you give from your life experience, based on your life experiences and what you've learned?
What I would say is, number one, always try and do whatever you're doing for the sake of Allah. Because if you try, it's difficult at times, you know, and it's, you know, things can get at you, but always try and remember why you're doing something for the sake of Allah. Secondly, knowledge is very important, because I remember when I was at university, and this is one of the things that actually led me to some confusions, is that I was just reading everything, you know. I remember even when I was in school, you know, somebody gave me something about Baha'ism, and I was looking into that, and I was looking into you know, all these different things. So you need to know your own religion. Especially, I'm so surprised that sometimes people involved in da'wah, or they think they're involved in da'wah, but they haven't studied Aqidah. And you're like, okay, so what are you calling to?
Yeah, I think that's something that's, of course, very important, because when it comes to, you know, refuting a lot of the atheistic doubts, a lot of them are focused on Aqidah. On Aqidah, yeah. So,
and people don't understand Aqidah. And this is, like, I remember I was talking to his brother, and his brother was very inspired by, you know, the debates that Hamza does, the big debates, and he used to watch these debates and stuff, and he started studying philosophy, and he came up to me one day and he said, I believe in Allah because it's rational, not because it's the fitrah, not because it's natural. I believe in Allah because it's rational. And I said to him, this is kufr, because Allah speaks about the fitrah. So this guy, he just thought, okay, let me just go learn philosophy and then I can refute atheists and stuff. So I had to explain to him, no bro, you need to study Islam. Right? Because if you study the Aqidah, our Aqidah, you would know that actually we believe in Allah because of fitrah. That's primary, right? And everything else is to bring out the fitrah. So that's the second piece of advice, that you need to learn, and especially you need to have some form of connection with the Quran, even if it's just flicking open the Quran and reading an English translation now and again. Like in the day, just flicking open, looking. You need to have this sort of thing, because too much because you mentioned da'wah, there's too much focus on me. It's about me, you know, it's about my followers, it's about you know, my likes, it's about this, it's about that. But when you actually are connected to the prophetic mission, the mission that the Prophet ﷺ began off with, which is that, you know, Allah says in the Quran, it is He who has sent His messenger with guidance and religion of truth, so that it may prevail over all deens, all systems, all religions. It's not about you, it's about Allah, and it's about His deen. And if that's in your head, you're less likely to make mistakes. So that's the second piece. A third piece of advice, well, I'm not really sure what to say, but I would say that,
what about, okay, so
surrounding yourself with good people is always good, because, you know, one of the things which is it's an amazing blessing being in Ahira, is that you're with a group of people who can sometimes criticize you openly and say, well, you're doing this wrong, you should fix up. So you need that as friends. A good friend will always remind you when you're doing something wrong.
Last question. At the moment, obviously, we're facing, like, Ahira obviously is set up as a Dawah institute, but I know that they deal a lot with sort of Muslims like ourselves who might be like facing doubts and this kind of thing. What would you say to those people who are sort of, at the moment, they're Muslim and, you know, they might be having a bit of trouble with some trouble with their faith? What would you say to them? What would your one piece of advice be to them?
My piece of advice is irrelevant. What I would say is our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the cure to ignorance is to ask. I really believe that if somebody sincerely studies just the life of the Prophet ﷺ itself, and you literally just think about it, and you think, okay, this man at the age of 39.5, no one knew about him, no one cared about him, no one today would even have heard of him. Except at the age of 40, he received the first revelation. Since then till now, he's changed the world. Literally, even if you look at every single society in the world, every single country in the world, you go up to them, you say to them, have you heard of Islam or the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? They've heard of it. So the impact that this man had, and the fact that, look, every human being, and all of us, right, we're all impacted by our society. I mean, why am I dressed like this? Why am I not wearing a poncho? Yeah, like the Mexicans. Because I'm a part of the society. People act the way that you act in your society. If you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, he's a man who is surrounded by shirk. He's a man who is surrounded by zina. He's a man who is surrounded by all types of vices and ego and status and tribalism and nationalism and warfare. Yet, he is somebody who had none of those ills. And he reformed his entire society. Now, if you can show me in society, like if you look at Confucius, or if you look at other figures in history, they were a product of their society. They were similar to their society. Yet, if you look at him, he is unique. So if you just put aside everything for a minute, all the doubts, all this, that, study his life, and just look at it and think to yourself, is it possible that this guy is lying? And if you're sincere, you will say, absolutely not. It's not possible, right? That's without even looking into, the Sakina blog about the future predictions of the Prophet ﷺ or whatever, right? Just look at his life. And at that point, I'm just giving you a crude example, right? At that point, say you are watching a video online and there's some atheist professor or some Christian talking about preservation of the Quran, whatever. Some guy is just talking nonsense, right? He's just trying to put doubts in you, whatever. Look at that guy and compare him visually with the Prophet ﷺ and say, which one do you believe? And that will be your answer. Because you know, this man can lie, but this man definitely can't. And if he can't, then everything that comes from him is the truth. And you use that as a sort of benchmark for everything else in your life. And this is why, I had, there's this brother who came up to me when I went to my old university, City University, to give a talk. And this brother asked me exactly the same question you asked me about doubts, about doubts and this and that. So I said to him, what if right now you went out, you did dua, you asked for a sign, and you saw the stars realigned and said, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Would you ever doubt beyond that point?
Of course not, yeah.
He said, no. I said, what if a guy comes up to you, starts talking about this, that, what would you do? He said, I will never doubt beyond that point. I said, if you study Islam, you will see a proof which is for you as clear as that. And after that point, you should never doubt. We should study it first.
Fair, inshallah. I think we'll leave it at that then. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Well,
it's nice talking to you today, bro.